Hello, this is Mashnu, and here is position number 30 of the middle game training. So first of all, I'm going to show you a few moves that happened before this position. The last move of black was rook to c7. The rook was on c8, attacked by the knight on d6, and the last move of white was knight from e4 to d6. Now, of course, if I would show you this position and ask you what to do here with white, I'm sure that most of you in a few seconds would say knight to d6, but it's so obvious that this is a very strong move, placing the knight on that outpost on d6. So that's the reason why I chose to show you this position. So the question is now what to do here with white. What would be your plan here with white, and on what ideas would you base that plan? Now pause the video and think for about 5 to 10 minutes about the possibilities here for white. I'm going to show you the rest of the game in a few seconds. Okay, so one of the interesting ideas here is that if we look at the black pieces, they are all placed on the queen side. Another thing is that the black king is still in the middle of the board, in the center, and that can give us the idea that we must try with white to enter into black's position on the king side. Notice that the knight on d6 is attacking f7. That's a weakness there, f7. Also g7 is undefended. Now, listening to this, the next move will not surprise you. Queen to e4 was played. The idea of queen to e4 is to enter on h7, capture on g7 and capture on f7. That's the main plan. But of course, knowing this general idea is not enough to be sure that queen to e4 is a good move, because as I've told you in another video, we always need to use both sides of our brain. One side is verbalizing the plan, like we are doing now, looking at the characteristics of the position and verbalizing what a good idea could be, imagining our pieces entering to h7 and g7, etc. And the other part of the brain is the part that uses calculation. And we need here to calculate what if black would play knight takes e5, for example. So before making the decision of queen to e4, the move played, we need to calculate a few variations. And perhaps this is a good extra exercise now. What about knight takes e5 now? The idea of knight takes e5 is of course that then the knight on d6 loses his support of this pawn. Pause the video and calculate what would happen. What would white do if black plays knight takes e5? Okay, I'm going to show you the main variation here. It's, by the way, not what happened in the game. I'm going to show you the rest of the game in a few moments, but first let's have a look at this variation, knight takes e5. If knight takes e5, then white has a beautiful check here on f5, knight to f5 check. Yes, this knight can be taken, but then follows queen takes e5. And here white has a tremendous attack against the black king. If the king goes to f8, then there is checkmate in 1, queen to e8, checkmate. If the king goes to d8, same thing, queen to e8 is checkmate. And if black chooses to place the queen in between, then we simply with white can take on g7. Queen takes g7, winning the queen because of this rook on e1. Now let's return just a little bit, because after here this move knight f5 check, perhaps you think, okay, but what if black doesn't take, well then simply if the black goes to f8 for example, we can simply take this knight and we're a piece up. So knight takes e5 or queen takes e5 are both winning moves because we have lots of material then. Now let's return to the game, because this was of course also calculated by the player with the black pieces. So I realize now that I haven't told you who the players were in this game. Well, it was played in 1947 and with white was playing Emil Richter, Grandmaster, and with black Enrico Paoli. Now that I don't know this player with the black pieces, Enrico Paoli, but I'm almost sure he must be an Italian player because it sounds very Italian, his name. Now let's continue with the game. Here the move made by black was queen to c5. And here white made a very interesting decision. He could choose here to continue the attack with queen to h4 check. He could also choose to go with his queen to h7. But instead of this, he decided actually for a more simple way to win the position. And that is to take on b7 with his knight. Let me show you. Knight takes b7, rook takes b7, and now queen to h7. It's almost impossible, well it is actually impossible to defend g7. I mean queen if king goes to f8 then follows simply a check and then we capture on g7. Now it might look a bit strange that white has traded his knight from d6 that was targeting f7, but just take a look at what happened after this. Queen to b4 was played. The idea is to defend with the queen by going to f4 defending f7, or going to g4 defending g7. So in other words, right now white must act. He took on g7. Queen to f4 was played, placing the queen defending this king side. And now comes a very beautiful move. It is bishop to e4. What's the idea behind bishop to e4? Well, there is a very direct threat, and that is bishop takes d5. If e takes d5, then the pawn advances to e6, and the knight is targeted, the f7 pawn is targeted, threatening e takes f7 with check with this rook. It's a very strong attack. There is not much black can do to prevent this, because this knight is pinned, and now we see why it was important to take with the knight from d6 the bishop on b7. You see, this was foreseen by white, foreseen this whole variation. When he took on b7, he must have seen this idea of bishop to e4 and seen that this knight would be pinned then because of the rook on b7. h5 played by black. There is, well, not much black can do. Bishop takes d5, and now rook to c7 was played. Well, we have now many ways to win, and the one chosen by white was to play g3, attacking the queen. The queen went to g4 and now followed knight to g5, and this was enough. Black resigned here. There is this, of course, the threat of taking on f7 with the queen, and white is a piece up, so there's really nothing to do here. If black would take here, then we simply take on f7, followed by knight e6. Let's return a bit now. Here, bishop takes d5 played. Just to have it really clear, if is here, this move is played retaking on d5, then e6 is the idea, and this is really very dangerous for black. The knight is attacked. If the knight moves, then f7 is going to fall with check. For example, let's say knight to f6, e takes f7 check. Where does the king go? To d6 or to d7? It doesn't really matter. Wherever the king goes, white will promote you and have a queen. So this means that here white, after taking on d5, had won a piece. So that's why rook to c7 was played. Well, I hope that you found this fragment interesting, and I think that this idea of looking at middle game positions is really useful to improve your chess level, because this is what we meet in our own games. Constantly we reach a middle game position, and that's where we start thinking and doubting sometimes what to do, what plan to follow. Now, the more examples and the more exercises you do about this, the better you will be in this part of the game. Alright, thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time on YouTube.